This object has terrified everyone who crosses its path. From unexplained accidents to supernatural events, his past is something you'll be shocked to discover. Today, you will now discover the most cursed object in history. Are you ready? So let's go. In a secret laboratory in Los Alamos, New Mexico, there is an innocent-looking metallic sphere. Just 8.5 centimeters in diameter, this small silver ball hides a deadly secret that changed the course of human history and left a trail of destruction in its wake. Nicknamed the Devil's Heart, this object is none other than the core of a nuclear bomb. 6 kilograms of lethal plutonium-239 condensed into a compact and deceptively simple form. But don't be fooled by its ordinary appearance. This sphere contains enough power to annihilate entire cities and claim thousands of lives in an instant. The history of this cursed artifact dates back to the end of World War II. 3 atomic bombs were developed by the United States with the aim of forcing Japan's surrender. The first, nicknamed Little Boy, devastated Hiroshima. The second, Fat Man, obliterated Nagasaki. But the third was never launched, as Japan surrendered before it could be used. The fate of this third unused bomb remained a mystery for a long time. Instead of being dismantled, it was sent to the top-secret laboratory at Los Alamos, where scientists could study its deadly mechanisms. This is how the Devil's Heart came into the hands of some of the most brilliant and reckless nuclear physicists of the time. Now, I have a question for you. Are you already subscribed to our channel? If not, take advantage now and sign up to stay up to date with the greatest curiosities in our world. Now that you've done that, let's continue. At first glance, it's hard to believe that something so small could cause so much destruction. But it is precisely this deceptive simplicity that makes the plutonium core so dangerous. All the destructive power of an atomic bomb is contained in this shining sphere. Scientists at Los Alamos were determined to unlock the secrets of nuclear fission and understand exactly how this little ball of metal could trigger the apocalypse. They called their experiments Poking the Dragon's Tail, an apt metaphor for the dangerous nature of their work. The goal was to determine the exact point at which nuclear material would reach criticality, the moment at which a chain reaction would become self-sustaining and explosive. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse with forces they barely understood. One of the most audacious scientists was Louis Slotin, Canadian physicist known for his intelligence and risk-taking. Slotin had witnessed the horrors of radiation up close a few months earlier when his colleague Harry Daghlian suffered a fatal accident. During a similar experiment, Daghlian had accidentally dropped a tungsten brick onto the plutonium core, starting a chain reaction. Although he was able to stop the reaction quickly by removing the brick with his bare hands, the damage was already done. He received a lethal dose of radiation and died after 25 days of agony, his body literally decomposing from the inside out. Slotin was at Daghlian's bedside during his painful final journey. He witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of radiation exposure. But not even this traumatic experience was enough to dissuade him from continuing his own dangerous experiments with the Devil's Heart. On the fateful day of May 21st, 1946, Slotin brought together a team of 8 scientists for another session of Poking the Dragon's Tail. Using only a screwdriver, carefully manipulated 2 halves of a beryllium shell around the plutonium core. The beryllium acted as a reflector, increasing the neutron density and bringing the material closer to the critical point. It was an extremely delicate procedure. One wrong move could start a catastrophic chain reaction. Slotin trusted his skill and experience to keep the experiment under control. But that day, the dragon finally woke up. In an instant, the room was flooded with an intense blue flash. The scientists present felt a wave of heat course through their bodies, accompanied by a bitter taste in their mouth. Plutonium core had reached criticality, releasing a devastating blast of gamma radiation and neutron. Slotin reacted on instinct. With a swift movement, he separated the 2 halves of the beryllium shell with his bare hands, stopping the chain reaction. His heroic act saved the lives of his colleagues, but sealed his own fate. "We're all dead," Slotin declared calmly after the incident. He knew he had received a dose of radiation far beyond the fatal limit. In the days that followed, scientists anxiously monitored their own bodies for signs of radiation poisoning. They meticulously calculated their positions at the time of the accident, trying to estimate their chances of survival. Slotin received the largest dose, the equivalent of 21 million microsievert. To put this into perspective, a dental X-ray exposes a person to about 8 microsieverts. A plane trip from Paris to New York results in an exposure of about 60 microsieverts. The average annual exposure of a person to natural radiation is approximately 3,000 microsievert. The effects of radiation on the human body are devastating. DNA is torn apart, cells die by the millions, and organs begin to fail. It's a slow, agonizing death. Slotin lived for 9 days after the accident. His body swelled and became covered in blisters. He vomited constantly and suffered excruciating pain. His colleagues took turns at his side, helpless in the face of his suffering. The heart of the demon had claimed yet another victim, but his path of destruction was far from over. Even those who survived the immediate accident would bear the scars for the rest of their lives. The guard who was on duty that fateful night, for example, died of leukemia 33 years later, a grim reminder of the far-reaching nature of the nuclear curse. The Slotin incident marked the end of manual criticality experiments at Los Alamos. The Devil's Heart was finally retired, relegated to a maximum security vault, where it could no longer threaten innocent lives. The Devil's Heart may have been retired, but its sinister influence continued to spread throughout the scientific world. The incidents at Los Alamos were not isolated cases. They were just the beginning of a dangerous era of nuclear experimentation. One of the most notable cases occurred in the Soviet Union, involving a young scientist named Anatoly Bugorsky. In 1978, Bugorsky was working at the U-70 synchrotron, the most powerful particle accelerator of its time. What happened next would defy all medical and scientific expectations. During routine maintenance, Bugorsky made a fatal mistake. He stuck his head inside the particle accelerator tunnel at the exact moment a proton beam was being fired. A beam of particles with energy comparable to that of a supernova explosion ripped through his skull. Surprisingly, Bugorsky felt no pain. He only reported seeing a flash of light brighter than 1,000 suns. The pencil-thin beam penetrated the back of his head and exited near his nose, leaving a trail of cellular destruction in its wake. The dose of radiation Bugorsky received was estimated at 3 billion microsievert, 600 times the dose considered fatal. For context, this is 200,000 times more than the radiation received in a chest X-ray. It was a level of exposure unprecedented in human history. Everyone expected Bugorsky to die in a matter of days, but against all expectations, he survived. Not only did he survive, but he initially appeared to suffer no serious effects. In an act of surprising stoicism, or perhaps denial, Bugorsky didn't even mention the incident to anyone and simply ended his workday. In the following days, however, the effects began to manifest themselves. The side of his face that was hit by the beam swelled enormously. He was hospitalized and doctors prepared him for the worst. But Bugorsky kept fighting. Over the years, Bugorsky faced a series of health problems. Half of his face was paralyzed. He suffered partial hearing loss and developed epileptic seizures due to brain damage. But surprisingly, his mental faculties remained intact. He even managed to complete his doctorate after the accident. One of the most bizarre effects of the accident was the asymmetrical aging of his face. The side that was hit by the particle beam aged much more slowly than the other side. But not all victims of the nuclear age were so lucky. One of the darkest cases was that of patient Cal 1, actually a man named Albert Stevens. Stevens was one of 18 people secretly injected with plutonium by the United States government in an unethical study of the effects of radiation on the human body. Stevens was chosen for the experiment because he was wrongly diagnosed with terminal cancer. He didn't actually have cancer, but doctors didn't discover this until after they had injected him with a much larger dose of plutonium than intended. Ironically, Stevens ended up living to age 79, much longer than anyone expected. During that time, your body absorbed about 3 million microsieverts of radiation per year. He unwittingly became one of the most radioactive human beings in history. Stevens' case raises profound ethical questions about human experimentation and the use of state power for questionable scientific purposes. I'm leaving this video now for you to watch. Take advantage and click on it right now. Well, that's it. And until next time, curious.